Arthur Gordon Pym, chapters 13 through 16. I hate to dwell so much on Poe's mistakes in this novel because, as a short story writer, he's always so precise, but it's clear that in many ways Poe was not ready to publish this novel and was doing it as a way to make money. But we can find a few blatant examples in chapter 13. For example, on page 1105, after a night of excessive anxiety and fatigue, owing to the position of the Hulk, we set about killing and cutting up our tortoise. He proved to be much smaller than we had supposed, although in good condition, the whole meat about him not amounting to more than 10 pounds. The tortoise here is referred to as male, but only 3 pages earlier, on page 1102, Poe declared the tortoise as female. Then on page 1106, he was frightfully emaciated, so much so that although he weighed 127 pounds upon his leaving Nantucket, he now weighed not more than 40 or 50 at the farthest. Is this another mistake? Could Augustus really lose 87 pounds in 3 weeks? I find that incredible. Still, despite my quibbles with Poe's carelessness, the novel does have some deep and strong literary moments. For example, what is the significance of Augustus' death? In the first half of the novel, Augustus operates as Pym's alter ego, so to speak. When Augustus dies, Dirk Peters becomes Pym's alter ego. What does this substitution mean? Pym's first double was white, handsome, impulsive, and rationalistic. It was Augustus who made the plan for Pym's stowing away. In his place remains the Indian half-breed, ugly, dwarfish. Peters is strong, crafty, and resourceful, better equipped to help Pym survive the unspeakable dangers which yet await him. It's been pointed out by critics that the color symbolism in Pym is a clue to one of its subterranean meanings. White is a color of mystery, awe, annihilation, as in the case of Moby Dick. Black is also the color of mystery and terror and of annihilations from which Pym, with the aid of Peters, half white, half dark, is saved. The narrative associates the African American with violence, cruelty, lust, bestiality. The ending regresses towards two opposite yet complementary conditions. He regressed toward the white and towards the blackness, towards such comforting maternal images as the warm white water and the womb-like vortex, and towards such frightening boogies as the brutal black savages and the tomb-like inhumation under the landslide that contrived to kill the white explorers. He regresses, in short, towards both dying and being reborn, towards the extinction of consciousness and the realization of a supra-consciousness in the moment of the self's annihilation. Leslie Fieldler maintains that Peters is the, quote, dark spouse in Pym's fantasy of miscegenated homoerotic love, miscegenated meaning sexual relations between members of different races. But the emotional logic of the tale must be verily wrenched to support such an interpretation. Another interpretation is Daniel Hoffman's, in which Augustus, being the rational, prefictive police side of Pym's mind, is debonair when in town, full of stratagems and clever plans, but unwittingly he leads Pym towards his destiny of disastrous suffering. Immediately after the cannibal feast, which subsequent events, the direct rescue of the survivors by the Jane Guy, proved to have been unnecessary, Augustus sickens and dies. This is as much to say that part of Pym, projected outward as Augustus, the workaday reasoning mind, the civil social creature, can neither abide nor survive the horrors which it is yet the fate of Pym's body and soul to experience in his not yet fully conscious search for truth. On page 1108, I have another comment on style. Busied ourselves in securing our wine and tortoise meat, so that we might not lose them in the event of our rolling over. Got out 2 stout spikes from the forechains. Note the journal style. Why? Is Poe in a rush to produce copy? Journaling with incomplete sentences is the easiest type of writing to produce. On the other hand, given the nature of the narrative, it's also realistic. If I were writing an account of my travels, I'd probably write in a journal style rather than in the style of a well-polished essay or novel. As is often the case with Poe, the answer is probably a little bit of both. On page 1109, we've already discussed masculinity in the novel. What do you make of the following passage? My principal terror was now on account of the sharks, which I knew to be in my vicinity. In order to deter these, if possible, from approaching me, I splashed the water vigorously with both hands and feet as I swam towards the hulk, creating a body of foam. Sailors and pirates are supposed to be hypermasculine, yet here they are splashing to scare away the sharks and weeping like children. This seems to fit into Pym's character in the first half of the novel. But does it fit Peter's character? Poe seems to realize that his audience would question the unmasculine behavior of these men, so he adds a justification on page 1110. Such weakness can scarcely be conceived, and to those who have never been similarly situated will, no doubt, appear unnatural. But it must be remembered that our intellects were so entirely disordered by the long course of privation and terror to which we had been subjected, that we could not justly be considered at that period in the light of rational beings. Why this passage? Real men don't get scared, but they were scared because they were no longer, quote, rational beings. I point this out because in the second half of the novel, Pym's character starts to change. I would argue unrealistically. Suddenly, Pym becomes a man, a hero, an alpha male, a leader. On page 1112, chapter 14 initiates the third voyage in the novel on the Jane Guy. Read some of the text from page 1115. What does this sound like? It also reads like the captain's log. Pym is writing as if he were the captain of the ship. Chapter 14 is our geography lesson. The albatross is, of course, a direct reference to Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. The difference here is that, again, Poe is striving to create a realistic-sounding travelogue. So instead of invoking the albatross as a symbol or good luck or as a poetic metaphor, he delves into ornithology, where we learn the peculiar nesting relationship of the albatross and the penguin. On page 1118, Poe describes the arrangement of nests, which I visualize as follows. Do you see any significance in the geometrical pattern that Poe creates here? Discuss it in your journal or bring it up in this week's discussion forum. Chapters 15 and 16 are largely plagiarized and read so. The novel becomes more of a travelogue treatise here. The reason? I am cynical and am reminded of Balzac and Dickens, who are paid by the page. These chapters point out very much so how much Poe was a consumer of popular contemporary culture. It also raises the question about genius. Can a plagiarist still be a genius? These chapters show that where plagiarism is concerned, Poe was a hypocrite. Poe, as we discussed previously, was continually accusing Longfellow and Hawthorne, among others, of having plagiarized from him, yet he often concealed his liberal borrowings from the text of others. Nowhere is this more evident than in Pym, especially in these chapters. Poe lifted whole sections of Jeremiah Reynolds' address from 1836, in which Reynolds vigorously petitioned Congress to establish an exploratory venture to the South Seas, and from Benjamin Morrow's narrative of 4 voyages from 1832. This plagiarism, I think, largely accounts for the Pym in the chapters on the Jane Guy to appear so out of character. Pym in these chapters appears vastly more experienced and mature than the one who starts the novel. His discourses knowledgeably on nautical navigation, as well as South Seas flora and fauna. Does any author create freely from outside sources? Not really. So what constitutes originality? When and under what conditions is borrowing from other sources acceptable in a work of fiction? How does Poe's plagiarism affect your assessment of Pym and Poe as an author? These are good journal topics for this week.